I'm going to share my screen with you. I hope you'll be able to see it. And this is really so that some of the quotes that I do are more easily understood than my just reading them out. Yesterday's inauguration of the 47th President of the United States is reported to have cost an outrageous 170 million US dollars. Of that amount, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, and OpenAI contributed $1 million each. The challenge posed by social media platforms and their role in the public sphere is one of complexities, complicities, and complications. Complexities, regional and national legislation and regulatory frameworks. Complicities, corporate and government interests. Complications, public awareness, socio-cultural sensibilities, linguistics, accessibility, affordability. Social media have also become synonymous with misinformation, the unintentional spreading of inaccurate information, and disinformation, the deliberate spreading of lies. For these reasons, when we speak about social media, it is extremely difficult to present a clear picture or to identify cause and effect. Social media platforms are, of course, a worldwide phenomenon, globalized under X Corp and Meta, and in competition with the likes of WeChat, Douyin, Weibo, Moj, that's the right way to say it. They are affected by national policies, politics, and economics. Their reach and speed of delivery, unlike anything seen before, allow publicizing opinions and comments on anything and everything to do with society. They depend on freedom of opinion and expression, which includes positive and negative speech, but not hate speech. As noted by the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres in June 2019, and this is a quote, "Addressing hate speech does not mean limiting or prohibiting freedom of speech. It means keeping hate speech from escalating into something more dangerous, particularly incitement to discrimination, hostility, and violence, which is prohibited under international law." National laws have tried to keep pace, but there are disparities and confusion. For example, England and Wales recognise two kinds of hate crime. Stirring up offences. Since the 1970s, incitement to racial hatred has been a crime, distributing racist material or spreading inflammatory rumours about racial groups. Later laws criminalised incitement on grounds of religious and sexual identity. And aggravated offences. Many crimes, assault, criminal damage, harassment, and public order offences, are classed as aggravated crimes, which attract higher sentences when there is evidence that they were motivated by hostility based on race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, or transgender identity. But policing speech and expression is controversial and complex. In principle, the bar for criminality is set high. In addition, the UK now recognises non-crime hate incidents, NCHIs, described as those that could escalate into more serious harm or indicate heightened community tensions, but which do not constitute a criminal offence, such as using derogatory language towards a politician on social media based on their race or religion. Just criticising or using derogatory language are not crimes, unless clearly motivated by hostility based on race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, or transgender identity. But the problem with NCHIs is that they result in police records for people who have not committed a crime, thus infringing freedom of speech and contravening Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, protecting freedom of expression, which permits holding opinions, receiving and sharing information and ideas, criticizing, making value judgments and assumptions, engaging in political debate and speech, and expressing oneself artistically. Freedom of opinion and expression are therefore at the heart of social media interactions, raising questions of responsibility, accountability, and communication rights. How then to protect human dignity, equality, and respect in the digital communications environment? How to balance regulation and freedom of speech in the public domain? This balancing act creates tension between identifying controversial content and enforcing appropriate responses. According to Mark Zuckerberg, Meta now intends to focus its automated systems on, quote, tackling illegal and high severity violations like terrorism, child sexual exploitation, drugs, fraud, and scams. But in a cop-out, and again, the quote goes on, for less severe policy violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take an action. On the 9th of January 2025, this year, the International Fact-Checking Network sent an open letter to Mark Zuckerberg underlining the vital role that fact-checkers play in upholding democratic values in today's world, pointing out that, quote, Meta never gave fact-checkers the ability or the authority to remove content or accounts. So that responsibility stayed with Meta. In addition, Meta had ignored suggestions on how to improve content labeling to make it less intrusive and censorial, and even exempted politicians and political candidates from fact-checking, quote, even when they spread known falsehoods. And the theme of self-censorship was echoed by Sarah Spiker in her recent comment on WAC's website, Meta Freedom of Expression for Whom, where she said, by removing barriers to hate speech in a stated bid for freedom of expression for some, Meta will undoubtedly be silencing more who already find such platforms unsafe and unwanted. As we know, freedom of expression is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and in later treaties, and it has become a pillar of democratic accountability and communication rights. And yet, freedom of expression is often invoked by those spreading malicious content as the right to engage in hateful discourse. For some, freedom of expression includes toleration for hate speech, a stance often reflected in the content of social media platforms. We should keep in mind, however, that while online communications repeatedly make use of inflammatory speech and images, discrimination and incitement happen in other ways. Just last week, the UK's controversial leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, made wild comments about grooming and rape gangs. She suggested that, quote, cultural issues need to be examined, characteristically ignoring the possibility that she might be contributing to misinformation and generalization. And she pointed to a systematic pattern of behavior, not even just from one country, but from sub-communities within those countries. She said that the perpetrators came from, quote, a very poor background, a sort of peasant background, very, very rural, almost cut off from even the home origin countries that they might have been in. Repeated exposure to narratives and images that denigrate are also likely to have a cumulative negative impact on people's perceptions. I'm referring to online video streaming services, Netflix in particular, with its 261 million subscribers worldwide, but also Amazon Prime Video and Disney Plus, which increasingly offer films and TV series that are uncensored, except notionally by parents, and that portray extreme violence and hostility of all kinds. As a result, images of war, killing, and violence against women and men are becoming normalized. What responses can we make apart from taking the moral high ground and watching from a distance? We can strengthen public interest journalism, strengthening forms of journalism on all platforms that are voices for social progress, justice, and peace. Media literacy. greater awareness of how digital platforms are constructed and function, greater awareness of the need for public interest journalism if democratic ideals are to survive. Counter-speech, activities aimed at responding to hateful content online. If you see a violent or vulgar comment and engage with it, you're doing counter-speech. And full disclosure, Freedom of Information Acts for big tech, requiring social media companies to disclose data critical for public oversight, including information on algorithmic decision-making, data collection practices, and content moderation policies. 4.5 years ago, WAC Europe published Breaking Down the Social Media Divides, a guide to addressing hate online. Its conclusion is still valid today. Our living together depends on our ability to respect each other and to be able to disagree with each other without using hateful, vulgar, or threatening language. We must stop being silent bystanders and use our voices and social media presence to confront online hate speech in order to bring respect and civility back into the dialogue and to break down social media divides. But as with many of the complexities, complicities, and complications that face us in life, that may be easier said than done. Thank you.